are you?
Joseph.
Seafaring and the skies be clear.
We're celebrating the anniversary.
Heave-ho! Ye Buccaneers!
So raise your mug of scotch
Before it's too late, be hearty.
Joseph.
Would like to say good day. Come on, let's have a party.
Joseph.
Joseph Jaffe is not famous. I'm kind of famous. I'm Jerry Springer. And Jaffe is no host. He'd be lucky to be in my audience, let alone on my show. Well, maybe he's crazy enough to be on my show. I take that back. And that's not a good thing.
This is my best kind of show notes. We didn't touch one of them, not even one of them. I'm not sure which one is Paul Rudd and which one is Lane Green.
Final card here is the ultimate outcome.
Today is Take Your Dog to Work Day.
Like Scooby-Doo.
Without further ado, his debut.
Sweet Caroline.
Everybody say hello to Sammy. Is it not good?
I'm just pausing so that you just are at the front of your screen.
I'm so enormously flattered.
Branding is not a bad blind date.
I'm gonna have to take a picture of this.
No, this is agape. This is love.
I really enjoyed this. You did do your homework. You asked great questions.
I'm flattered, thank you. You just made my day.
Look at you! You are insane!
How did I do that?
You're
How
insane!
did I do that?
You're insane.
It's June 23rd, June 23rd, 2022, and it's my anniversary. It's my anniversary. Did you wish me happy anniversary? Did you? Do you know what anniversary it is? I'm gonna just leave that hanging right now, and let me know if you know what anniversary it is. Maybe I'll give you a gift. You don't need to give me a gift, but maybe I'll give you a gift. So I'm going to let you think about that. But I am happy to be here. I'm happy to be alive. I'm happy to be healthy. And I'm happy that I have an amazing guest with a wonderful, wonderful story. And even though we were talking about embrace the suck, it's not what you think. It's not what you think. I promise you it's not what you think. But there are so many amazing, amazing directions that we can head, and we will head there soon enough. This show, as you know, is brought to you by the Alpha Collective. That is my new project, a premium community designed to help partner executives with degens, with crypto enthusiasts, with entrepreneurs to win at the business of Web3. And you can purchase a pass at alphacollective.xyz. Now, I have to tell you, in thinking about how to bring this collection to market, one of the ways to position it is using a very traditional way. Under $50 a week gives you access to 52 Alpha Talk speakers. 52 Alpha Talks in 52 weeks. It is unprecedented. No one in the history of the world, that might be an overpromise, has attempted to bring together maybe $1 million worth of keynote speaking rate cards for under $50 a week. And my goal is to deliver 100x in value and utility. At the end of the day, is that not what we are in the business of doing, of delivering value, delivering utility, surprising and delighting? And so these Alpha Talk speakers are, it is a way for us to monetize our thought leadership at the end of the day. So something else that I've been playing with is, if you do purchase a pass in the first 100 passes, you become what's known as a first customer. And first customers are going to be treated differently. They are going to be really, really elevated and served in a slightly different way. Why? Because your first customer is everything. Without them, you never got off the ground. So I think it's really important, no matter what we do, whether we're building audience, whether we're building community, whether we're starting a business, maybe a coffee business, is to think about who are the people that walked through the door first, whether it was friends, family, whether it was through a referral, whether it was dumb luck, but something in them decided to choose you. Never forget them, and never forget those first customers, because chances are they'll be with you for life. And so one of the things that I'm playing with is, if you do buy one of those first customer passes and you buy another 9, which remember you can still sell, you'll get an in-person keynote from me on the house. Now, Alpha Collective is not really about me. It is about our amazing speakers and the community. Todd Kaplan, the Chief Marketing Officer of Pepsi, has just signed on to be an Alpha Talk speaker. Baratunde Thurston, you may have seen him. In fact, you probably have seen him on the internets, on TV, on CNN, etc. Just an amazing thought leader, entrepreneur. He is one of our Alpha Talk speakers. Faith Popcorn, the original futurist. I remember reading her book and learning about cocooning. Ironically, that's all we're doing at the moment now in this new hybrid reality. We are cocooning. We are cocooning with our loved ones, and we are staying in a happy place, in a comfort zone where we are safe and secure. She is such a futurist that she is both ahead of her time and she is on time. And Zoe Skaman, who was on the show, one of my amazing guests on the show, she is just an incredible light and thought leader in the emerging tech Web3 innovation space. She is one of our Alpha Talk speakers. And remember, at the end of the day, the goal here is 52 Alpha Talk speakers. But here's the important thing. 26 of them will be male and 26 of them will be female. A lot of people are talking about, how do we get more women in tech? How do we get more women in Web3? Well, you know what? I'm doing something about it. And that's what you can look forward to. But now it's actually time to get to our seated soliloquy. And the seated soliloquy today is called Big Deal. Now, you're going to hear this theme over and over again today. I'm kind of a big deal. Well, you know, Enrique is kind of a big deal. He's kind of famous because I'm decidedly not famous, but there is something interesting about big deal, about being a big deal. Now, one way you could look at it is say, big deal. Who are you? Self-important, you know, self-congratulatory. You might be a big deal to some people, but to other people, you're a nothing and a nobody. And I see an interesting red thread in terms of living our lives for other people, living our lives for external validation, being able to be told we're awesome, when at the end of the day, all we have to do is look in the mirror and know we're awesome and feel we're awesome, and have the people that mean something to us tell us that we're awesome. Because who really matters? Your spouse, your partner, your wife, your husband, your children, your friends, or a bunch of strangers who kind of tell you you're a big deal because, I don't know, you have a talk show, or you're on television, or you have X number of fans or friends or followers on social media. I don't think so. I also think that there's something powerful about the idea of humility. And I've always said this, which is, we all want to be famous. We all want fame and fortune. We all want status. We all want to be recognized. And we all want to be, I mean, literally recognized walking down the street, but also we want to be recognized in the sense that people can see into us and see and validate and acknowledge our substance, our contribution, our heart, our soul. But my message is, be careful what you wish for, because the day that you give up your privacy, the day you give up your anonymity, the day you give up the ability to be a small deal, is the day that you give up a piece of yourself. So you know what? I'm not a big deal. I'm not even kind of a big deal. I'm kind of a small deal. And I'm pretty happy about it. And I hope you are too. And now it's time to bring on my guest, Enrique Camacho, or Enrico. Did I say Enrico? Enrique Camacho, because I was going to say Enrique Camacho the way he did it in the most beautiful, beautiful way. And so I've already butchered your name, Enrique. In fact, I think he's left. I think he's stormed offset. He's out the green room. He just took all the M&Ms and threw them a mile away. No, he didn't. But let me tell you about him. And I actually thought that it might be a good way to introduce him by actually reading, his bio, because I think it is just so super, super authentic. From US Army Colonel to Uber driver, this is a true story. I was kind of a big deal, at least I thought. I retired and started a coffee company, and then I realized I needed money. So between writing business plans and developing product lines, I drove an Uber. Here's what I learned in the experience. Nobody cared that I was kind of a big deal. Only 3 out of 453 passengers I delivered ever asked about my story. Perhaps the 450 thought Enrique Camacho was a middle-aged immigrant supporting his family the best way he could. Truth bomb hit me. We're only as good as our last race. People don't really care what we've done. They're interested in what we can do for them today, tomorrow, and the day after that. Enrico Camacho, welcome to the show. I don't even know what happened there. I got you made me tongue-tied.
Hey, thank you, Joseph, for having me on the show. I appreciate it. Or is it Joe? Or is it Joe?
Joey, Gio.
Yeah. Hey. Well, yeah, thanks for having me on the show. Much appreciated. I was looking at your previous guest list. Super impressive. I was quite surprised when you contacted me and said, hey, I'm interested in your story. So, yeah, thanks.
Well, look, you're welcome. I will say that on one level and on one hand, I believe as a host that if I can't make anyone in the world look interesting and celebrate them and allow them to tell their compelling story, then I've failed as a host. But with that said, you really, really do have an amazing story and a compelling one. And we're going to get into that. I think every human has a story. Every human has had interesting interactions, moments in their lives that by sharing them can inspire others.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. If you don't believe that, drive an Uber for about a year. You will meet some of the most fascinating people you can possibly imagine. You'll hear gut-wrenching life stories. You'll be inspired, and sometimes you'll just be depressed. But drive an Uber for a year, or a taxi cab, or any kind of Lyft service where you will interact with a cross-section of society in your local community, and you will be inspired. And that's what, one of the things when I drove Uber, I learned was, so real quick, I want to shape this discussion a little bit here. So I was in the military for 30 years, the United States Army to be exact, if anyone's interested. And, when you do a profession, you have a certain language, a vernacular, the way you talk about things, kind of shared experiences. And when you do that for 30 years, all of a sudden that's your world. And when I left the military and I started driving an Uber, I didn't know how to talk to civilians. I truly didn't.
Well,
So
I mean, there off the bat, referring to us as civilians proves that point, does it not?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So my decision to drive an Uber was somewhat intentional. Like I said, all right, I'm in this new world. I'm out of my bubble. I'm out of my career bubble. I'm in this new domain, and I got to learn how to effectively communicate in this new domain that I find myself in. And driving an Uber in this case made perfect sense. I interacted with so many different people. I wrote in this little LinkedIn post that you showcased in the intro. Thank you. Like 3 situations or scenarios in which people I met were just fascinating. One guy, and I felt so gut wrenched for him. I literally picked him up as he caught his fiance cheating on him. Like he walks into the bedroom, she's cheating. He wants to get out of there because he surprised her. He flew in, got a cab, went to the house, surprise. She's in bed with another man. So I'm the Uber guy who's picking him up and taking him back to the airport so he can fly home. So for 45 minutes, I get to hear this individual's gut-wrenching story.
Oh my God.
It was terrible. But on the other hand, I felt like, you know what? I provided a service for this guy because the whole time he's just, letting out his grief, and I'm being suddenly, bartender, counselor, whatever you want to call it, in the front seat, just trying to empathize with this individual as I'm dropping him off at, Terminal 3, departure lane, whatever. That was terrible. And then I also showcase like a single mom who's dealing with difficult teenage kids. I have 4 kids, so I know what it is to deal with difficult teenage kids. And I'm shoveling her to her second job. Like she's come off her day shift job. She's rolling into an evening shift job, single mom raising 3 kids. Oh man, you talk about learning about an individual. And then my final example that I just showcased here was I lifted the U.S. women's national figure skate champion to her training session. So I got to talk to her about the figure skating world, Tara Lipinski and
All right. So this is interesting, but I'm more intrigued by Glenn, one of our regulars, who says been there and done that. So now I'm wondering, does that mean he's driven an Uber? He's cheated on someone. He's been cheated on someone. I have no idea. You're gonna have
figure
to
skating champ, maybe.
He was an ice skater. I have no idea. The comment just comes in, and I have to find context. But he's still saying exact thing happened to me. We're still not sure. He's going to keep us. He's going to keep us guessing.
The suspense.
Enrique, we need to take a step back. To move a few steps forward. But I think let's begin with the fact that you served in our military, and so I would be remiss if I didn't say to you, thank you for your service, and we certainly appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate the support, much needed. Thank you.
Absolutely. So now, when you say you were kind of a big deal, would that mean you were kind of a big deal in the army in terms of your status, in terms of your title, in terms of your rank? Is that the genesis of your big dealery, if you will?
Yeah, for sure. So, I reached the rank of colonel in the United States Army, which is one step below being a general officer in the United States military. And as a colonel, you command a certain level of respect. You're in charge of a lot of different people. And in my situation, I was an intelligence officer. So I worked in Washington, D.C. Quite a bit. I worked with some national level intelligence agencies. And oftentimes the work that we did would influence U.S. policy globally or regionally in this particular case and situation. So I would say that my team and the people that I led would have access to, let's say, the Secretary of Defense or the Chairman Joint Chiefs of Staff, or in some cases, White House officials, when it came to matters associated with the region in which we were studying or analyzing. So In terms of a big deal, following U.S. national security policy, advising on national security policy. Yeah, I led organizations that help facilitate that. We were certainly involved. When you're in for 30 years, you've been involved in the major conflicts that the United States has been involved in. So at the tactical and at the operational and strategic level, certainly been part of some operations that are book worthy. Maybe I can hire you to write a really good book one day, since you've written so many and are good at it.
I will co-write it with you. I will not ghost write it. I will co-write it with you. Well, I mean, without, and we'll pause here for a second, because it's so interesting to me. We were discussing the concept of embrace the suck earlier. We were talking about the whole idea of the trust score. Rather be with a medium performer with a high trust score. This is a Navy SEALs insight. General, I think Stanley McChrystal has spoken about teams. There's so much we can learn from the military in terms of leadership, in terms of team building. Maybe that will be your book, but I sense that there's a different story, a much more human story about humility, about selflessness, about empathy. These are the sides and the faces we don't often see from our military, perhaps actively because they might be seen as signs of weakness. But certainly all I hear and all I see when I look at you and when I hear your story is just humanity.
The military, number one, is an amazing organization. It exposes you. So real quick background. Neither of my parents graduated high school, right? And I'm a first generation American. My father, Puerto Rican Panamanian, my mother, German. We were not a house of wealth by any stretch of the imagination. But the military all of a sudden afforded me all this opportunity to experience the world, in some cases like people have never experienced. I mean, I've literally lived in England and Germany and Japan and Korea, and not to mention, conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan and the early days of Bosnia and Kosovo. So I've got to do all that. I've got to experience that. And the military has afforded me those opportunities, to which I am eternally grateful. So yeah, but what the military also does in terms of this humility aspect, right? So the military puts you in a position where you are in that position for a limited period of time, maximum maybe 2 years. What that teaches you is that in 2 years, you are leaving. In other words, you are irrelevant to that job and that mission. That's humbling, because it does not allow you to put your worth on your position. And I don't know, Joseph, if you're still there.
No, I'm here and I'm listening. I'm like, this is full screen stuff. I mean, I want you to.
All of a sudden, you were gone, and I was like, "Wow, I'm in the green room all by myself."
By the way, we'll go from the sublime to the ridiculous and back to the sublime. One of the things I've realized actually in being a host is sometimes people it actually takes them by surprise when they're like, "Wait a second, what happened there?"
Right. Where's my wingman?
All right.
Where's my battle buddy?
If it happens again, I'm going to give you what I call the voice of God, which is please continue, Enrique. But let's go back to this idea. I mean, I even say it in my book Built to Suck, when I talk about this idea of embracing your heresy. It's like I'll talk to an oncologist or an association of oncologists, and I'll say, your job literally is to put yourself out of business. Like the day that we don't need you anymore and you are let go is a great day for humanity. And of course they get it and they agree. It's much harder for other people to realize that the fallibility, the transience, and the fact that no one lives, no one stays forever. So I'd love you to go back to that for a moment and just expand on this humbling nature of knowing that it is a moment in time and you need to make the most of it.
Yeah. Let me take you to the year I retired, which was December 2019. I retired in December 2019. I'll never forget the day because there was a retirement ceremony beforehand. But on the day, and I was working at the time, that was a Defense Intelligence Agency in Washington, D.C. Had a pretty important account that we managed, that I led. And on that day, one of my fellow officers, when it was time for me to leave the military, and in effect that position, I'm walking down the hall of this building. I have my badges and my credentials, and all that. And just before I exit the building, I turn everything in. I turn in the badge, turn in my credentials, my computer accounts are all locked and shut off, and I exit. And at that point, that's it. I have no more access to that arena. And when I exit, that was a humbling, almost kind of depressing day for me. I walked out of the building, and knowing that this was it, and I felt lost, actually. It was like I had invested so much time and energy into this position, into this mission, and with the snap of a finger and a turn in of a badge, that's it. I am no longer attached to that. And you would think it would be liberating, right? I mean, because along with those positions comes trials and tribulations and all that, but also hard work and relationships and networks formed and everything, and just like that. And I no longer have access to any of that. But the encouraging component of that is years of this idea that you are there temporary and you are not defined by your job, more so by your character, by your quality, by your integrity, by your performance, by your duty. And knowing all that has built skill sets that transfer or translate into whatever else it is you want to do. But I will say at that moment, that was exceptionally humbling and difficult. I called up a good friend of mine and I said, man, I just need a drink. just meet me and I need a drink, because it was a bit overwhelming at that moment.
Well, of course, you needed a drink. Excuse me, and I mean, surely that drink was coffee, no doubt, right?
It was absolutely coffee.
That's a neat little segue. We're going to get into your entrepreneurial exploits, but it's amazing, and it is a microcosm of life, right? That is life. Life also can be snuffed out in an instant, a click of a finger, blink of an eye, tragically, but also. There's an inevitability of our time being limited. Are we making the most of it and realizing that, going back to what you were saying, that we are not defined by our job, we're defined by our character, we are defined, by our relationships, etc. So you leave the army and you're feeling lost, you speak to a friend and help me now bridge to, and so I decided to start a coffee company.
Yeah. So here's the reality. I mean, I knew the inevitable was coming. That wasn't a surprise. So you begin to contemplate, well, what do I want to do after this 30-year experience with the U.S. military and defense and all that? And I knew I didn't want to do two things. Number one, I didn't want to be a contractor doing similar type of work. And number two, I didn't want to be a government employee doing similar type of work, because I had felt that I had done essentially everything I'd want to accomplish within my area of expertise. And I felt like I needed something to stretch myself. to find a new passion. Now, I had been hobby roasting coffee for about 3 years, just, in my kitchen kind of thing. And I was exploring just the world of coffee, which is fascinating, Joseph, if you ever get an opportunity to really look into it. So, coffee grows in like exceptionally challenging locations. They say between the Tropic of Cancer and Capricorn, right? And these are generally difficult places to reach. And so a new profession that spoke to my like wanderlust, if you will, right? Your sense of adventure, your sense of travel. I was like, well, coffee's that in spades. I can literally travel the world, Central America, South America, Asia, Africa, and hit different locales and really experience different cultures while satisfying the requirement to supply myself coffee. And that was one element. It was because kind of this whole idea of coffee being this international product that has grown in these sometimes impoverished and challenged regions, I found fascinating. And then the whole supply chain of coffee, like how does it come to my roaster? What's the process in which it travels through to eventually arrive in my roaster? That was a whole nother area that I thought, oh, that's super fascinating. How can I drill down on that? And then finally, in my case, it was the roast craft, which is part science, part art. How do you take that agricultural product and roast it to a level that's delicious and presentable to, for example, your coffee table? So as I began to think through that, I saw, Joseph, I could do this until I'm like 90. And I think I could just scratch the surface of knowledge and expertise in this particular industry. And then I was hooked. That was it. And I said, that's what I'm going to do. Now I just got to, number one, resource it and figure out how to exactly do it, which is what I'm doing today.
All right. So now you've decided, first of all, I have no doubt that you probably could have chosen to do anything in the world and you would have done it with the same curiosity, sense of adventure, passion, and determination to succeed. But you find out very quickly that there's one ingredient missing, and that is a green ingredient. It's not the leaves. It is actually the green of money. And so what made you decide to drive an Uber as opposed to going to a bank or, maybe, an institution affiliated with, with the military, etc. What made you decide to drive an Uber?
Yeah, great questions. So timeline. I retired in December 2019. A global pandemic strikes the world in March of 2020. Possibly the worst time you can conceive to like start a business, particularly a retail business. It's not that I did not pursue, banking options, institutional loans kind of stuff. Grants and all that. That was certainly on my to-do list. But everything, Joseph, takes time. To apply for a business license, to solidify your products, to decide, how are you going to organize and all this stuff takes time. And so while you're doing those things, there are these periods of just gaps that you can be productive in certain arenas. And I looked at it and this idea, whoever invented this kind of gig economy that you can just like turn on an app and work for as long as you want to work or as short as you want to work and make money, genius. And so I looked at that and I said, you know what? I got like 3 hours a day where I'm just waiting. I'm either waiting for an inspector or I'm waiting for, a document, or I'm waiting for loan approval, or I'm waiting for whatever. I got 3 hours in a day. Why not just turn this app on, go pick up 10 customers and get paid? And that way I can buy, that extra coffee that I wanted to purchase, or that, the designer bag that I need to get done, or something like that. So I found that gig enterprise a wonderful way just to just to do something productive in these moments of waiting.
Now I understand. And Mohanad Al-Sadi said, thank you both for sharing your story and experience. And he is watching on LinkedIn as we speak. Well, I told you that Thursday we have our resident philosopher, Tom Morris, in the house. And so it is a good time as any to hear what he has to say. And his segment today is called Limo Drivers.
I'm Tom Morris. I was with a big bunch of financial company executives once. It was a big meeting, international company, their top leadership team. We were having a big dinner together. As a philosopher, I get to hang out with all kinds of folks. At dinner, one of the senior executives, a woman, said to me at the head table, she said, Tom, you're always talking about the ancient philosophers like Plato and Aristotle, and, Socrates, and even more modern people like Descartes. But are there philosophers around in America now? She says, looking at me, of course, a philosopher. I wanted to go like this, right? But she said, where are the great philosophers now? And I said, you really want to know the answer to that question? She said, of course I do. I said, they're the limo and town car drivers of America. And she said, oh, what do you mean? I said, can you think of a job that's even remotely like this? The limo and town car drivers of America get to meet every kind of person there is in some setting or another. They get to drive people to weddings. They get to drive people to funerals. They get to drive financial folks around on their road shows. They get to drive real jerks, and they get to drive wonderful people. They're with celebrities, they're with athletes, they're with entertainers, they're with guys like me. They're with all sorts of people, not for 30 seconds, not for 2 minutes, but often for half an hour or an hour, or sometimes 2 hours, or sometimes half a day or 3 days. They get to meet this wide array of humanity, and they get to hear them talk, and they often talk to them. And they share their stories, and they soak up stories. I've heard the most amazing stories about human nature from town car and limo drivers. And they get to process the highs and lows of what it is to be a human being in this world. And then they have time to sit and think as they're waiting for that next airplane, as they're waiting for that next customer to get into the car. I said, in the Bhagavad Gita, the ancient Hindu text, it's all about a warrior and his driver, his charioteer, who happens to be a divinity in disguise. So the next time you get to step into an Uber or a town car or a limo or a taxi cab, you just may have some great wise person in disguise in there with you. Take advantage of the opportunity, soak it up, and learn from the drivers of the world. Happy philosophy.
Gee, I wonder what little bird tipped him off about who my guest was going to be, and or is he just that good at what he does? I think he's that good.
That was amazing.
Well, I mean, in your case, a retired colonel. I mean, it's and so I always find a quote for my guest, and this was the quote that I found for you. I'm kind of a big deal, and do you know who that was said by?
No, who, Joseph? Who said that?
It was Ron Burgundy. Ron Burgundy himself, the anchorman.
Yeah, that's right.
Turns out he really wasn't such a big deal. And I guess anyone who says that they're a kind of a big deal probably isn't. But here's the interesting twist, which is out of 453 rides, only 3 people ask your story. Clearly, they didn't know who you were. Clearly, they didn't think you were a big deal, even kind of a big deal. But that just struck me. It struck me as it just struck me as kind of almost resignation, which is really, is this what we've come to, that we would be so that we would have no curiosity, no empathy, no ability to try and connect with someone else and understand their story, but also what Tom was saying, which is you have no idea who is next to you on a plane, on a train, in a boat, whatever. Take the time to understand them and their story. So I'd love for you to tell us about that experience. 3 out of 453.
Yeah, when I wrote that LinkedIn post and I put that quote in there, number one, I had a mathematician check me because I also said, that my Uber rating was such and such, and he broke down the mathematics and said I was wrong. I was like, okay, I'm off by 2 decimal points. But back to your point on this, 3 out of 453. I don't blame most of the riders. I don't. If you've ever called up an Uber, you know that you get a license plate number and you get a name and some very grainy photo of the driver. So you don't know who you're getting in the car with. If you called my Uber, it would say Enrique Camacho with some kind of grainy photo and my license plate number. And then you climb in my car, and I suspect that a majority of the riders thought, oh, middle-aged immigrant man who's providing for his family the best way he can. And I'm not going to bother him. I'm just going to let him drive because, maybe I don't want to hear, maybe his English is broken. Maybe I don't want to hear the sad story about, how he is financially in his life position or whatever. And so I think a majority of the riders might have felt that way. And the other riders, just a casual conversation. And then you have that group of riders who just want to get point A to point B. They don't want to talk to anybody, and they're going to bury themselves in their phone. All right. Maybe I understand that a little bit. I always tried to, when I was their driver, to learn about them. I want to know who's in my back seat. I want to know kind of their backstory and where they're from. So I enjoy the conversation, and I realize that a lot of people just want to get point A to point B and carry on with their work, which comes down to this idea that, I thought I was a big deal. And then I'm sitting behind this car and I realized that this person just wants me to get them from point A to point B. All they care about is what I can provide for them at this moment. And that realization, it's not a bad realization. It's just like a moment that says, okay, I used to be a colonel. I used to do all these cool things. But now I'm either an entrepreneur, small business owner, or at this very moment, I'm just an Uber driver. So I'm going to learn and grow and be the best possible Uber driver I can be. And as I transition to becoming an entrepreneur, coffee roaster owner, I'm going to be the best coffee roaster I can possibly be. And although my background and my skills have enabled me with certain characteristics to succeed, I'm still deficient in a lot of areas in this new career path or in this new job. And I got to learn it. It doesn't matter what I've done in the past. It seems to be irrelevant to the guy sitting in the back seat that, I was a part of a team that hunted down some major terrorist networks. They don't care. They just want to make sure I can get them to their, appointed place and time of where they want to be delivered.
It's an incredible photo, the juxtaposition, because you've got the swagger, you've got the swagger and the, and that confidence. I mean, you are the man on the left, but on the right, what I see is, and I see it in your eyes, even though most of your face is covered, I see heart. I see, not to say that there wasn't heart on the left, but I just, same guy, same cocking of the, of the head, but it's an amazing juxtaposition. And Enrique, let me ask you a question, which is you write this LinkedIn post. Let's spend just a few minutes talking about this. By the way, shout out to Andy Porteous, my ex-Unilever client who, for some reason, LinkedIn wants me to know that Andy and 59,810 others. I mean, talk a little bit about what happens with this post. You write the post, how it blew up, why it blew up, why you think it blew up. What kind, I mean, LinkedIn fame. Andy Warhol once said everyone would have their 15 posts of LinkedIn fame. I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, Joseph, it was incredible. I literally crafted up this post one morning because I've told this story to a dozen friends, and they're like, "Yeah, you're Enrique. You're just Enrique. That's what you do." So I scribbled it down. I hit send, and I went off and I did business for like a solid day. Roasted coffee, delivered product, put product in the mail, engaged with clients. And on a whim, I picked up my phone because I've written a LinkedIn post before, and you get the obligatory 10, 20 friends, who comment or hit the like button. And I look at my phone and it is just berserk. I was like, what is happening? And then you see there's like over 3,000 comments. I tried, and I hope I hit every single comment because I'm not famous and this is new to me. So
nor am I. So that makes two of us.
And so what I ended up doing was I think I grouped the responses into like three different categories. One are just people who read the post, were inspired by it, and said, "Hey, man, good job. That's fantastic. That's cool." The second group were people who really empathized with the scenario and situation of a life change. Like you're doing something and now you're doing something new, and wanted to kind of express their growth in that process and their encouragement through the post. Yeah. And then finally are just, a group of people who want to give me advice on stuff or sell me something, which I guess is popular and common in this community. But what has resulted is unprecedented growth in my business in the past 2 or 3 months. So job opportunities have surfaced. New business opportunities have surfaced. And then I've met a lot of just amazing people who have reached out to connect and just want to have a dialogue. And I'm always down to dialogue with new people and new experiences, but it's really opened the aperture to the community and networks of people that I associate with. If you look before that LinkedIn post, it was all just former military guys, right? All former friends, either in the military or in the government. After that post, I mean, there's, educators and business leaders and social media folks and
talk show hosts,
talk show hosts, like famous ones or ones who are not so famous.
I was thinking when you said about people trying to sell you stuff, you probably got the amazing, inspirational, life-changing story. By the way, are you interested in more leads for your business? I get at least 5 of those every day.
Yeah, or Nigerian prince.
Are you satisfied with your inheritance right now? Yeah. So I want to talk about the coffee business and also Victory Service Dogs, which we'll get to. You're still very much connected to your past, even though it wasn't as much of a clean break as you might have suspected. But there's something in your bio, and it certainly was repeated here, which is something that you say, which is, we're only as good as our last race. That really resonated with people. I'd like to, just before you even address that, why do you think this blew up the way it did? It did, but why do you think? What was it? Was it the military outfit? Was it the headline? Let's get into a bit of digital marketing and content strategy. What do you think it was that just hit the way it did?
I think it resonated with a cross section of society, with like the blue collar guy who's working really hard. They fancy themselves the Uber driver who has their own story, like a lifetime of experiences and knowledge, and not appreciated by people around them. So I got a lot of that. like, people who are blue collar guys who are working hard, and no one seems to appreciate either their contributions or, kind of their life story thing. I got a lot of that. And then I got a lot of people who are transitioning, or people who are in careers that connected with this idea that you just read, is that we're only as good as our last race. And the truth is, and that comes to this transition, when you leave an organization, or you leave a position or whatever, it's nice to tell war stories about it. It's nice to revel in the past and the glory and all the accomplishments, but the individual who you're engaging with today generally doesn't really, I'm not going to say they don't care. They probably do, but it's more about what you can do today and tomorrow. And what you did in the past, yes, interesting. Let's talk about it over a beer, but can you contribute today? And are you able to contribute tomorrow? And that seemed to resonate with, I would say, people with degrees, or people who held CEO positions or founder positions or managerial positions. Yeah, and I'm not sure why that resonated so well with that community of people, but it certainly did. That comment, I commented a lot on people who had made reference to that particular statement. I don't know. I'm sure in your experiences and your books and stuff, you have kind of insider knowledge on why people resonate with that thought so much.
Well, I'm going to make a deal with you, which is I will write your next book if you write my next LinkedIn post about Joseph Jaffe is not famous, because I want some of that voodoo that you do so well. And I'm going to actually tell you what your next book is going to be called.
All right.
This is one of my little pet projects on the show. It's going to be called, to borrow a tagline from a retail company, it's going to be called "Fall into the Gap," because and this is the method of my madness, which I didn't even realize. Fall in is a military term, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And then obviously the gap, because I think the gap is the interesting part of the story. It's the fact that we're never between, and we're always between. And you did something about it in that moment before, between this incredibly storied past and this incredibly exciting future, this entrepreneurial future. You were able to slow down, to pause, and to take in your surroundings, and quite frankly, not be bored out of your mind. The gap, like a gap year.
Yeah.
There's something there, I feel.
Yeah, let's write it.
Let's do it. I'll at least write the forward or the backward or something like. Enrique, we'll talk about the coffee business now. And, I will just say, with full disclosure, I'm not happy with you. I was expecting my coffee delivery to arrive. I'm still waiting, but I am gonna do something for you in return, which is I will give you 1 week's sponsorship of the show on the house once I get my coffee. So you will be sponsoring the show, Model Citizen Coffee, for 1 week. I want to just ask you a quick lightning round question. This experience driving the Uber, this gap, how much did it inform, inspire, and even change you as you then, focused full time on this coffee business?
Yeah. So number one, truth. I realized I didn't want to do that for the rest of my life.
Fair enough.
Fun, entertaining, certainly educational. Your guest speaker, your philosopher guy, I think he summed it up beautifully. So I don't need to touch on that anymore. But I knew I didn't want to do that for the rest of my life. Secondly, is that there is a lot of humility when you step into a service role like that. And it just makes me appreciate those folks who operate in the service industry all the more. I will admit that I used to be I would say I'm not a bad tipper when it comes to the service industry folks, but I wasn't an excellent tipper. Driving for that period of time, I realized, you know what, I'll be a little looser on the tip for people. So just the service industry people at writ large deserve a massive amount of credit for what they do. And I don't think we appreciate them that much, especially those folks who showed up like to work during COVID when, when like the world shut down and you had a handful of people showing up to work, and every service industry in America was short staffed folks. So that gave me a real good appreciation for the service industry, because I would drive those guys, the waiters and waitresses, to their jobs at the restaurants. I would drive the guy who's doing janitorial work at the warehouse that evening, and I got to talk to them, and just all hardworking people, great stories. So it gave me a full appreciation of kind of the service industry. So I didn't want to do that for the rest of my life. New appreciation for the service industry and what those folks do every day.
I take away a lot. There is a lot to take away from that, and one of them is the interesting commonality about when we say thank you for your service as almost a one-liner. With respect to military, and here you are talking about a different kind of service. The other thing, and you said it twice in our conversation today, is sometimes the best way to figure out what you want to do is to figure out what you don't want to do, and through a process of elimination, find your calling or find your right path. But as I said, you haven't quite left that path, thank goodness, behind. Tell us a little bit about Victory Service Dogs, which is a non-profit organization helping vets with PTSD.
Yeah, so through my coffee business, I really wanted to connect with the community at a local level, and use my coffee business as a platform to do that. Fortunately, I was approached one day by this organization just to do some fundraising, sell a bag of coffee, give a certain amount of proceeds to this particular organization. So before I did that, due diligence, I went and I visited them, saw their operation. And here's the statistic that stuck out to me more than anything. I talked to the founder of this group, and he's been doing this for 7 years now. And these are veterans who have PTSD, high anxiety, depression. They go through a very rigorous process that pairs them with a service animal. And it's like a year-long process that they operate with this service animal, usually in a group setting. It's all about community and purpose. And then at the end of the day, service member and service animal depart their organization and go live a life. Now, here's the mind-blowing stat. In 7 years, not one of his clients has ever committed suicide.
Wow.
You talk about a measure of effectiveness for like suicide prevention. And I've been involved in countless, suicide prevention models and mental health counseling, and a lot of money thrown at it, especially if you're in a government organization, right? A lot of money thrown at this problem set. And here's one guy in a small operation and can tell me that in 7 years, not one, and we're talking the most vulnerable veteran community, right? PTSD, high anxiety, depression, can't sleep at night, nightmares, and all of that. And not one has committed suicide. I said, sign me up. I'm 100% behind you guys. Whatever I can do to help resource and fund or promote your organization, I'm totally down. So it was an easy sell for me. And we'll continue to try to raise money for that organization. In terms of measures of effectiveness, I cannot find an organization that has a better, more clear mission statement and better results than Victory Service Dogs here in Colorado Springs, Colorado.
I love it, and so now we will bring it home by talking about the coffee business, but specifically yours. Tell us about how the business works. Tell us about how we can get our hands on the coffee. Is it a subscription-based service? and of course when I'm going to get mine in the mail. I've been checking every day.
Joseph, a totally fair assessment of my ability to deliver to the host of this amazing show, but that's going to happen. So we founded this business as a coffee roastery, and everybody says, Enrique, you're going to do a cafe. And I says, no, I'm not interested in the kind of the barista, and I'm just interested in acquiring and roasting kind of the world's best coffee. So we have a website. You can clearly order online, not a big deal. We have our roastery right here up in Woodland Park, Colorado. We sit and share space with a cafe, so it's amazing. But I have huge plans for growth and expansion, Joseph, and I'd have to have you sign a non-disclosure agreement if I divulge everything here on your show.
Well, if you just lean in and whisper, and everyone watching will do their part to not tell anyone, but that's fantastic. Please go and find out more about Model Citizen Coffee on Facebook /Metabook. Obviously, the website is modelcitizencoffee.com, and you can follow them on Instagram at Model Citizen Coffee. Now, I don't know about you. I mean, I know that I'm not famous, but I'm rethinking everything that I said to you today and everything we discussed about you not being kind of a big deal, because it turns out it actually wasn't even the military that made you a big deal. You were a big deal all the way in high school, graduating class of 20, the prom king, most likely to succeed, athlete of the year. It was written in the stars that you would go on to great things.
Oh my goodness, you've done your homework there. I do want to preface everything. Okay, graduating class of 20 kids. A little perspective.
Hey, listen, nobody asked. That was sharing information that was not asked for. You should have quit while you're ahead. Enrique, it was an absolute pleasure. I have no doubt that we will stay in touch. And I also have no doubt that one of your customers in the future, besides Tom Morris, is going to be Chuck Norris, because this is what he had to say about your appearance today.
You are Chuck Norris approved.
And we will be back next week. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing with your host, multiple author, and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show, and if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.